Ready?
I'm ready.
There's another one where I destroyed a couple of old snare drum shells trying to do an Alex Van Halen thing. That could be another share. Oh man, are those teasers for the next ones? I don't know.
All right, welcome to another episode of Drum Stuff. Yeah, Jim, of course we want to hear about you breaking a few things, but before we do that, I messed up in our first ever dad podcast, and I left a section out. So I'm going to add that in first, and then we'll get to some new questions. So apologies to all of our fans. We're all the way up to 0.2 hours of watch time on this particular series. And so I know there's going to be a lot of frustrated people out there, but we're going to try and make it right. We're going to add in that piece, and then we're going to jump right into some new questions. So the original question was, how old were you actually when this all started, when you first started playing drums?
My questions of the day were, how old was I when this thing started, um, and then we'll talk about the hi hat. So we'll start with the age thing. This is. I had this question in my own life, thinking, when did I start playing, and how can I figure that out? And so there is a picture, and I've got to get this picture to you of me sitting at the drum set with headphones on with the old phone cord looking thing out to the stereo. And I'm figuring when that happened. So my older brother played drums. He was in high school from 1977 to 1981. Okay, so I was 7 when he started. I was 11 when he graduated. Um, the I can't remember exactly when he got there. There was this red drum set, red sparkle drum set that is always there. That I just remember it being there. But in that picture, it was upstairs in our house, and that's where there was a huge room up there, and because we were a family of 8, and so that was where the boys were, most of us boys. Um, and so in the corner, it was like a dormer, but anyway, that was where the drums were. Well, that moved out of there somewhere between 77 and 81. So I'm playing those things. I've got to be somewhere around 7 years old, is what I'm guessing. The other thing that tracks the age for me is that, okay, so my brother was in the high school band. Um, when you did band there was several phases of band. Early in the school year, it was marching band. It was back in the summer before you would start practicing because we march in parades. We do field shows at football games and field show competitions. And then as the year progressed, as the winter came on, that switched from to concert band, and so you'd be doing more of a concert arrangement, a big orchestra kind of a thing, and you would do, of course, indoor concerts and stuff like that. But also in the winter was basketball season, and so there was what they called pep band, and so we would play for basketball, home basketball games, and I would just hang out with my brother, and so I'm sitting there in the drum section and he's got a snare drum. And whenever there was a timeout or halftime or things like that, we play. Um, so usually during halftime, there would be we had a school song, and I don't know if I think that's an old fashioned thing, but anyway, just watching my brother, I knew the part on the snare drum, and so he and his buddy went to the concession stand, and it's a timeout, and the conductor, Mr. Z, is down there um, getting ready to play the school song, and so I just grabbed the sticks and I played the school song, and I think I played it well. I remember the conductor looking up at me and going, "What are you doing up there?" And so I had to be somewhere between 7 and 11. I'm guessing I was probably halfway between there, probably maybe closer to 11 than 7. I'm thinking I was probably 10. We'll just call it that. But yeah, I was able to play his part. I didn't know how to read drum music or anything like that, but I had memorized his part. So yeah, I think that's kind of when things started. So partway in his high school career, he got these newer drums. So the old Red Sparkle kit, the Star drums, man, uh, kind of became mine. And they were fair game. They were in the basement. Anybody could sit and play them if they wanted to, but I was the only one that really took an interest. And of course, my brother had his new ones, so why would he play the old nasty ones? But I don't remember getting to play his new ones. If I did, it was very seldom. They were in his room, which was different than the room that had those Red Sparkle drums in the top floor of my folks' house. So anyway, that's kind of how I figure the age stuff. And yeah, so I'm guessing I started somewhere around 7. Now, we had told the stories about a couple of little toy drums that I had or stuff that I put together. That possibly could have been before that. The interest was there before that, but actually playing was probably about 7 years old.
So about that story where you break the cymbal or inverted it, what's the deal with that?
Okay, so the story of the first hi-hats that I ever got that went with the nasty old sparkle drums, the red sparkle drums. Um, they were super cheap. So what happened was I ended up my brother that played the drums joined the Marine Corps, kind of left the drums to me, and so I played those for a little bit, and they were kind of falling apart. And so I traded those for another set. So finally, I had kind of my own drums. These were ones that I chose, and they weren't expensive drums at all. I'm not going to just go into name brands and all that stuff. I'm just going to say they were an entry level drum set for an entry level drummer. And so I had some cymbals that I bought with them. Didn't have enough money to buy very many, but I did have another set of hi hats. So I took the old hi hats, and this was set up in the basement of my parents' house. It was an old house, had cast iron plumbing going horizontally. And I thought, So I set up my drums underneath there. I didn't have enough money to get more cymbal stands. Everything costs, right? So I got these old junky hi-hat cymbals. I think they'll make crash cymbals, right? So I grabbed one, and all that stuff that I explained to you about the hi-hat and how the top hi-hat cymbal connects. Well, what I did was I just connected that, but I got a piece of wire, and I hung the wire over the cast iron pipe and let this wire come down, and then I just slid that thing up there and tighten it on, kind of like you do with the steel rod that comes up through the middle of the hi-hat stand, right? So now I got an extra crash cymbal, but it's not much of a mounting, right? I kind of cranked that wing nut down, make sure it doesn't come off of there, and I might have even bent the wire at the bottom just to make sure I had a little safety, right? But you hit that thing and it might swing. If you hit it too hard, it might swing back at you. And so you got to kind of duck these cymbals as they're coming. But hey, I had another crash cymbal. It sounded horrible, but I had something to hit. And the way it was going back then, I was trying to learn. There was really nobody. I grew up in a small town, and there wasn't any drum instructors or anything you could go and find out. So what you did was you just picked your favorite guy or your favorite band and put the headphones on, and you did your best to do what that guy did. And Phil Collins was one. I was trying to figure out what he was doing and do some stuff like him. He's a great drummer. Um, so I got a little exuberant and I whacked that new crash cymbal that was the old hi-hat cymbal, and it was so cheap it actually it inverted itself. Boom. So cymbals have a certain cup to them, kind of concave, convex, whatever that is. So it reversed itself. Whap. Um, and I think I clicked it back there, but it was never quite the same.
That's funny. Ingenuity right there, tell you what. Um, so you used the word, you got a little exuberant, I think, which I've had this question in the back of my mind, and now we're going deep dive drum stuff here, Jim. This is psychology of drums. Um, Probably a hard question to answer, maybe, but I've been wondering, like drummers in general, and you obviously can't speak for other drummers, but how would you describe the energy? Because I'm thinking this is like a full body experience. It's like hearing, sight. You've got your feet tapping things. You got your arms swinging. You're keeping these rhythms, and you're trying to, if you're playing with other people, you're trying to work with them. It's like a crazy, like full body experience. Um, So how would you describe that energy? And maybe it's changed over the years. I don't know. Maybe you can express yourself differently, and probably that would be part of the answer. Is like, yeah, sometimes you just beating on the drums because you're upset, and other times it's just like this super positive energy flowing through you, or whatever, however you want to say it. But yeah, I'm just curious, for yourself, however you would explain that, and then what you would speculate possibly on other drummers, if it's just, yeah, you think, I mean, somewhere my brain's thinking these guys, that some drummers are a little bit angry and they're like wanting to, I don't know.
Well, once again, I feel like a very insightful question. One of the things that comes to my mind is there's a reason why they made a Muppet animal, and the way he acted and just beating the drums and just going crazy and being this animal. Um, way too many drummers are that, and high energy, kind of spastic. There's all kinds of jokes about it. You know, they used to say, why do drummers leave a pair of sticks on the dashboard? Well, so they could park in handicap parking. But many times, it's a lot of high energy and very, very little finesse. And what happens, and this was something that you do often start that way when you're young, and it's kind of a natural thing, you know. You just want to hit and hit it as many times as you can, you know, just kind of thing. But I remember reading I used to get a subscription to a drumming magazine way back, and they were talking about this phrase called "less is more." And of course, when you're young, you're like, what are you talking about? Less is more. No, more is more. But you start to learn nuances. Hopefully. A lot of drummers, they don't. But thankfully, I think, you know, I started on trumpet, but I play drums at home. And so I learned to read music. I learned to play that kind of thing, trumpet kind of stuff, while still playing drums. But I had a good friend of mine, and he said it with playing a trumpet. You know, he was like, every time you pick up that horn, make a pretty sound. And I thought, that applies to drums. It may not be a pretty sound like a tone that you can get out of a trumpet or something, but it has to do with your attitude. And this is, like I said, such an insightful and a good question, because it does go into the psychology of drumming. It goes into, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? How do you fit into the band? If it's just you in the basement, yeah, go ahead, bash away, do what you want to do. But I've talked to drummers before, and they're like, you know, cracked cymbals and broken stuff. And I just like, man, in all of my years, I've never, that one cymbal that I talked about that I hit, smashed it pretty hard, and it went inside out. And I was just like, I don't want to do that again. The equipment always cost so much, and I didn't have any money. So that was part of it. But part of it, too, was just like, it's just obnoxious. And so to learn to play soft as a drummer is very, very difficult. And they make all these goofy things to help you to play soft. But so you're right in that you have this demand for energy out of your four limbs going independently as best you can, while you're trying to listen to everything around you. And, you know, I think it was Phil Collins said the drummer is the goal keeper. And I kind of like that. It is our job as drummers to keep the tempo even. And there are times, and you can make all kinds of arguments when you would vary the tempos on different things, but for the most part, it is your job. So sometimes that requires an energy level of wrestling, because sometimes the band will want to go faster, and sometimes the band will want to go slower, and so you've got to kind of push them at times and drag them back at times, and yet still trying to maintain musicality and still trying to maintain your part within the whole. And I, you know, when you said that, being this you know, full experience of all these different things, the physical part, the hearing, the seeing, the moving, all of that stuff. I never really thought of it that way, but that is probably part of why I enjoy it so much, and why I've missed it, you know, in the times that I haven't played. But it is that way. So you're I think it's like flying a helicopter. Not that I've ever flown one, but I think you've got a lot of things going at the same time. And you've got to be so aware of your surroundings. Well, you don't have to be. But if you want to be a good drummer and you want to be more of a musician than just a drummer, then that's what you want to do, and you want to add. Sometimes as a drummer, your energy is um, to lay down this canvas for other people to paint on. The rhythm section, for those that aren't familiar with that kind of stuff, the rhythm section in a band is usually the drums, the bass, the guitar, and the piano. Um, and that sets all of the chords and the rhythms for the song. And so, like I played in a big band for a long time, and there was 25 people in there. So you got a bunch of horns, you got all these different pieces, and they're playing over that. They're playing their parts. Sometimes they're soloing over that. So there's times where you just want to lay this foundation for people to build on, and be sensitive to what they're doing, and try to pick up on the nuances and maybe accentuate those nuances subtly. And then there's times in a big band thing where all the horns are just driving stuff, and you want to just really hit it hard because the trumpets come in right, bam, right there, and you smash, you make some big sound kind of stuff. And then there's times where you want to just choke off the sound real quick, and then you're going to transition to something in a different feel. That is so much fun, but it is tough. You really got to be aware of your surroundings. And so, yeah, the energy, if you only have one level of energy, you're only going to really play at one level, and if you can't play soft, and if you can't play different styles, it's not really cool, and I was kind of stuck that way. There were certain styles of music I didn't like, but I realized that if I was going to, I would hear that in my head, man, be a musician. Don't just be a drummer, be a musician. And that's a great thing to have in your head when you're playing. And so, yeah, I sat in with different bands, different styles of music that I wasn't really into, but it really caused me to learn and to appreciate the different styles and to hear, because different styles of music are going to have different accent points, different places where it gets soft and it gets loud, and it does different stuff. Different rhythms for different styles of music. I always liked, we would play some big band stuff and it would have that swing rhythm like I was talking about in that hi-hat deal. And then it would switch to a Latin beat, which is a completely different thing. And to transition and make a fill that goes from one to the other, I always found fun. I also like playing stuff in 3/4 or 6/8 time. So like a waltz thing, 1 2 3 1 2 3, or 1 2 3 4 5 6. And in the old, but you can put a little bit of swing into there, and you could just kind of make a cool feel with it. They kind of, I guess you could call that a jazz waltz or something like that. But there's a lot of little things you can mess with. And so if you just have this, Animal the Muppet thing where you're just going to beat the snot out of stuff, well, then yeah, you probably ought to be in a rock band, a heavy rock band, and you should probably not try to play anything else. But you limit yourself, And some people, and I don't know, I'm not saying one's better than the other. I happen to be in a place where, with drum music, I didn't read music, and with trumpet stuff, I did, and it helped. It helped me. Some people don't like that. Some people like to no, I want to learn how to read music. And that's fine. There's no right or wrong. But it's, are you growing? Are you listening? Are you playing off of each other? And there are times, and anybody, it's not just music. This can happen in a lot of things. But there are times, there was a good friend of mine, and I've had this happen a few times, where you play together, there's just a connection. And I don't know what it is. I don't even want to begin to say a whole lot about it, other than we knew what each other was going to do, and we would anticipate it. And there were times when we would play the exact same thing. Now, he was a guitarist, I'm drumming, but he would play something, and I would have the accompaniment to that, the what do I want to say, the compliment. There we go, the compliment to that at the same time. We didn't practice it, and we'd look at each other and just go, "Wow, that was really cool." And you get that connection with people. And music, like you're saying, when you really dive into trying to be more of a musician than just a drummer or just a screaming guitar player, or whatever, you become a part of the whole. And that takes, like I said, sometimes, yeah, you got to push things along, but sometimes it takes this a reserve
a reserve. And the best way I can describe it is people talk with horses. When you hold in a horse back and it wants to go, sometimes it will like, it will kind of drool around the mouth or froth a little bit. It wants to go, but it's being obedient to its director, if you will. And sometimes with drums, you just want to just wail and you want to go, but you know that this part does not call for that at all. And so you've got to really nuance it. You've got to pull yourself back and hold back and hold back. And then now it hits, and now you can go for it. But that's kind of to me, the energy levels that are just cool. And that's why sometimes when you're playing in a group that's just really boring, it's hard. It's hard to nuance that stuff. You just sort of melt into your drum throne. And so I think that's some of the thing, when you think about these bands that have done great things, different groups in history, it's those type of people combined, and it makes for some great music, but it can be a very volatile environment, and that can be hard, and that's why a lot of bands, in my opinion, sometimes they don't last too long. And when you get bands that are super creative and last a long time, that's a rare thing, and that's a beautiful thing. And it usually indicates that they are really good friends, and that yes, they are dedicated to making the greatest music that they can. And some of these guys were just, history changers in what they did with music and where they pushed things, and just amazing. The creativity and the innovative, but at the same time, I think they valued friendship, and they valued the connection between not just the people in the band, but their individual spirits, if you will, their individual. The soul of the band sometimes is the whole, but it's made of these individual parts. So you have to kind of respect both. And if you only want to, if the band is the ultimate goal, if making these great songs is the ultimate goal, and you're willing to sacrifice the people to get there, it probably won't last long. It might make some great music, but it probably won't last long, and it'll do some damage. But there's great examples of this in the 60s and stuff. There were a lot of studio musicians that never got credit on records because that's the way it went. But they had that chemistry, and they just wanted to make these great records, and they were totally interdependent on each other. There wasn't one big leader. They were all saying, we've all got a part to play, and we all just want to encourage each other to be the best you can be, because if we're all bringing our best, then this is going to be an awesome record, and it may stand the test of time. And if we're not willing to destroy each other to get that, because we're going to be studio musicians and we're going to be playing together for who knows how many years in all these different gigs, that's a really cool place to be. And you can look these folks up and stuff, but just incredible, the chemistry. And when you find that, it's rare, and you just want to play together for a long time. And so to me, that's what I was really fortunate to have that early, and experience it a few times along the way, and also experience times where it just wasn't there. And we could get hired and we could go play and it would be good. But it wouldn't be the same. It wouldn't be innovative. It wouldn't have that edge to it that's just like, ooh, man, there's an expectancy level when you start playing stuff, and you just got this feel for those other guys, and you're going, what's he doing? I'm just locking in on him. How can I encourage him by just playing a couple of little nuanced kind of things and little subtleties, and filling these little tiny pockets in between with something that fits, and it's not obnoxious, but it really is tasty. And that's hard to do. That's that less is more kind of thing, because sometimes not playing is exactly what's needed when you really, really want to play something. And sometimes it's just like, no, there was this beautiful, it's like a conversation. You have this beautiful statement, and you need like a couple of seconds to just go, wow, I need to appreciate that. And then come back in and then start maybe a continuation of that conversation, But to have this little moment that just says, just leave that right there for just a second and let that just be. And then come back into it in time, and when it's in music, But those are the kind of things
yeah, I like this, a deep dive into the psychology of playing drums and playing music and stuff like that. And I'm not a world class musician, I'm not on anything like that. But to me, what has made music enjoyable are those kind of things, and those are the things that I notice, and those are the things that, like I said, I was so fortunate to have those experiences with very small groups. But when I've thought about it and I've looked into it, it's a way of honoring other people that maybe are different than you and yet have something to contribute to the conversation, if the piece of music is a conversation, um, or to the thought or the idea that this piece of music is. Um, Within jazz, what's fun about it is that you have a chance to add to the conversation. Where classical music is beautiful, but oftentimes it's a recitation of something that somebody wrote. It's absolutely beautiful, stunning. I love classical music, and playing it is really fun. And very basic level, I've done that on trumpet much more than drums, just a tiny bit on drums. But most of my drum stuff has been jazz, rock and roll, pop stuff like that, where you kind of have you have a place. You have a place where you can contribute your little verse to the poem, right? Isn't that I think that was like a Walt Whitman or somebody like that. That the powerful play goes on, and you might contribute a verse. That is really a beautiful thing, and to hit it at the right time with the right nuance in time in the it's really cool. And then when it doesn't work, it's always like, oh, okay, I missed that one. That was a cool opportunity that's gone now. But yeah, that's kind of the energy, if you will, the it is. And there's times you'll have a 4-hour gig, and you're sitting at that drum set for 4 hours. I mean, you get breaks and stuff, but man, sometimes you get tired, and that's when it's hard to the physicality of drums can really wear you down. And big, heavy duty, powerful rock and roll shows and stuff like that, it does, man. You've got to be in shape to play those kind of things, and it just have that kind of energy for those kind of shows. And I didn't do a lot of that, especially later on. When I was young, I did. Um, but yeah, you got to be in shape as a drummer. It's tough, and a lot of drummers really do a lot of workout, and some, keeping your posture, stuff like that. It can be hard on your back and your neck. Some drummers have had a lot of trouble with that, just kind of bad posture for decades, and does some damage there. So it's tough. It's tough. I wouldn't trade it though. I really wouldn't trade it. I just absolutely love it. And I'm so glad I'll be kind of getting back into it after a long break. And this stuff, these questions and things are just so helpful to help me remember why do you do this? Why do you love it? And again, yeah, great, insightful questions. What a cool thing to do. And hopefully share with other people, and maybe encourage people to say, hey, look at drumming this way. Look at it this way. Let that little voice always be in your head that says, don't just be a drummer. Don't just be animal, but have finesse. Be an animal when you need to, but don't just be an animal. Have a bunch of different tools in your toolbox rather than.
All right, man, that's some good stuff. Yeah, that's not just drum stuff, life principles in there too. So that's fun to listen to. And we're close to wrapping this thing up, but I thought I'd explain again to people that are listening why these are so choppy as far as the audio. It's kind of ridiculous how I'm doing this, or how we're doing this, but I'm kind of trying to put it together on my breaks and stuff, and in some evenings here and there. But so basically, we're hands-free voice texting each other on the way to work or on the way to get a car fixed or something. And then I take those text messages, voice messages that have a max of 10 minutes. So you think that's quite a long time until Jim starts talking, and then it gets real short. No, I'm kidding. I've sometimes maxed mine out too, but so then I take that and then I screen record it. So I got to hear the whole thing again, and then I take that into an editing program and splice them all together. So yeah, we'll probably come up with a better way, but it is what it is. Just wanted to get this out there. So we're going to end this one with Jim telling us the story about how he tore apart a snare drum and like Humpty Dumpty and couldn't quite get it back together again.
Snare drum destruction. Hey, this is the story of the long-awaited story of the snare drum destruction that I did when I was a youngin'. So, yeah, I'm a really old guy, 55 years old. Seems pretty weird to get back into drumming, but hey, better late than never. So what that means is that I go back a long way in my drumming. So this was the 80s. This was the late 80s. And Ludwig made this thing called a slotted Colosseum snare. And if you could imagine this really deep snare drum, it was two shells, basically, a top one and a bottom one. There was a slot in between, and all of their cool chrome Ludwig hardware connected the two perfectly. And I never saw one before or since, and so I guess it was a flop in sales, but I thought it was cool. I'm trying to get this Alex Van Halen sound of this big, deep snare drum, and I don't have any money. So what do? I go into the into the boneyard of drum parts in my little basement, and there's these two old snare drum shells. I think one was a sparkle blue and the other one was like a sparkle. They weren't anything special. Thankfully, I didn't ruin some beautiful vintage drum. They were just very cheap and ugly, in my opinion. I was never a sparkle guy, ugly in my opinion, but you sparkle guys out there, hey, you'd have loved it. So what do? I take some aluminum, must have been from a screen door or something, a little flat aluminum, cut it into pieces, and I'm going to screw from the inside of the shells. I'm going to screw the aluminum into the top shell. I'm going to come down. I'm going to screw it into the bottom shell. Pretty simple, right? I had 4 pieces of aluminum. We're going to go around the shell. Well, I wasn't much of a carpenter in those days at all. So it's not straight. The screw holes are all messed up. But I somehow put the thing together, put some heads on it, just building the whole snare drum, get the snare wires on there. And I whacked it a few times, and it just looked like something that looked like one of Mom's cakes had flopped or something. It's just crooked on the side. It's about 8 inches deep on this side and about 9.5 on that side. And it sounded terrible. But, oh, God, I was so downhearted, man. I thought this was going to be it. This was going to be my Alex Van Halen moment. This was going to be like the whack, it's just like, what is that, Simon and Garfunkel, the boxer, lie, lie, lie. It's like, yeah, that's what it's going to be like. And I go, lie, 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 and it goes, thud, like that. I'm like, no, that's terrible. So tune, hit it again. It's like, blah. It's like, no. So anyway, I have no idea what happened to those. I'm kind of sad. There was a moment where some of my siblings got the itch to clean, in parentheses. And I think a lot of these things got cleaned out of my stash places because I was no longer there and I left things behind. But that's probably a blessing in disguise because, yeah, it was bad. So that is the drum destruction moment of my career.